Connesty, how are ye? Welcome to the Candlelit Tales Podcast and welcome to the shoffice. My name is Aron and I'm sitting down with my sister.
My name is Sorcha and I wasn't prepared for a radio host man beside me here.
I've had a bit of coffee, lads. Okay,
you
welcome to the Candlelit Tales
terrible
Podcast.
mistake.
We are doing the intro, Sorcha, pay attention. Welcome to the Candlelit Tales Podcast and the post-show chats for this series, the Mythic Places series of the podcast, which is very important that we get that right because otherwise people wouldn't know what they're listening to, Sorcha.
That is very true. In fairness, I am struggling today. It's been a long time since I had a day off at all, and it's going to be a long time until I have a day off again.
Ah, sure, look, aren't you only lucky to be doing what you love, huh? Yeah.
Urge to kill rising.
Okay.
I mean, no, it's fine. No murder bot here.
No murder bot. We are actually very busy at the moment, which is lovely. Thank you very much.
It's good.
Everyone.
I'm just tired now.
I mean, listen, big shout out to Meath Libraries, who was booking us a kind of a library tour in August. Shout out to everyone who's been actually contacting us for private bookings, for schools gigs recently. And yeah, we're just loving the chance to tell stories. We'll be telling stories live in Dublin and in VP on the, what day was that again, Sorcha?
In July?
Yeah.
The date of the 20th. I know this because I thought I was on holidays that date. And then I realised that I'd gotten the dates wrong and I couldn't have a holiday.
Aww.
I can. I'm just moving the holiday a few days early.
Obviously.
So I have a holiday still.
What people do.
Yeah, it's what normal people do. It just takes me like an hour of going, oh God, what am I going to do before I go? Change the dates.
Executive dysfunction. Ta-da.
I need to go to the doctor.
No, you don't. You just need to sleep for a few hours, all right? You just need to have a good night's sleep. That's a good idea, okay?
That'd be a really good idea.
Now, we're in the mythical post-production podcast chat office. It's a very mythic place to be in.
It is actually, and we mythically and characteristically realised a little while back that we weren't doing as many post-show chats. We had kind of stopped. We'd kind of gotten down to doing like one every 4 stories.
Yeah.
And I had a real moment of like,
why the fuck are we doing that again?
why are we doing? And then we remembered, because
Oh,
we talked about it, we remembered that it was really difficult to schedule post-show chats when you were in Guatemala and I was here.
Yeah.
And so we started doing them less often.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came back and it was no longer difficult to schedule post-show chats at all. And we just forgot that was why we made that call and just kept doing it. Because we were like, well, we made a decision once and decisions are hard. So
Decisions
we
are
better stick to what
very
we're
hard.
doing.
They take over all of your brain space for that short amount of time.
Aaron, we need to go to the doctor.
We got a lovely couple of emails from people who've just been listening to the podcast and reaching out to us and saying, hello, are we getting on, coming over from America, and people who are coming over and travelling and trying to get a couple of shows. And we're going, hey, where are your shows? I'm like, yeah, we're not doing as many because we ran ourselves into the ground there before lockdown. But we're still doing shows and we're still planning to do as many as we can feasibly do and be open for bookings as well, which is lovely. But this episode, believe it or not, is not just complete shy talk. It is looking back at the first 2 episodes of Mythic Places in Ireland.
We're talking about stuff. We're talking about the podcast stuff.
The podcast stuff.
The story stuff.
The story stuff that people enjoy listening to and listening to us.
So Aaron, what was your process for the Giants Causeway podcast?
Oh, hi, radio voice.
I can do it too.
You accuse me of this, and then every time I hear your story or your intros, I'm like, that's just you doing radio voice.
Yeah, but you do like morning DJ drive time, and I do. It's really late, and we're going to listen to some jazz.
Some jazz. You say so.
I think. Comment.
Leave
Tell us what our radio voices are for.
Yeah, comment in the comment section below and tell us whose radio voice is.
Whose radio voice is drive time and whose radio voice is like. See, I think your radio voice
jazz.
is like AM radio. You know what I mean? It's morning show. Stuck in traffic, getting everybody going. 'Cause we're going to the office now.
I got to get myself going. That's what that is. It's me getting myself going in order to.
Fair.
Like, I need a boost of adrenaline in order for my brain to put words into my face.
I gave you ice cream.
You did. It was amazing. It was Japanese. I don't know what.
I gave Aaron mochi ice cream and he'd never had it before and it was great.
And
Because it's great.
hurt my teeth because I had to drink tea right afterwards. And
That
it's
was
cold
your
and hot.
mistake.
I told you that was going to happen. I forgot about it.
You did not tell me it was going to happen. You said you've done a terrible thing by giving me tea and ice cream at the same time with no explanation whatsoever. So this is the first I'm hearing of this.
That's what I meant.
I really like hot and cold together.
Yeah, that's because you're, I don't know, you're one of the Fae and you don't have feelings in your teeth or anywhere.
You're not supposed to have feelings in your teeth. You have sensitive teeth. Go to a doctor.
Stop saying go to a doctor. I don't like this vibe. All right? I'm far too Celtic to be going to doctors. I'll swim in the sea and I'll throw seaweed at it.
Yeah, that'll fix your weird teeth.
Just chomp down in seaweed. It's, age-old cure for all sorts of stuff. Okay, so speaking of seaweed...
That's actually a very good segue.
Right?
Oh, God.
Oh.
I got too close to the shoffice wall and...
She nearly fell.
My chair squeaked against the thing was what I was reacting to because that's a disgusting noise.
Yeah, apologies for all the viewers, listeners, if you heard that excruciating noise that was Sorcha falling against the wall.
At some point edit this fucking chat.
We've 165 episodes, Sorcha.
We're never going to do it.
We're never going to do it. We've given up on that idea a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true.
And Oisín is not going to edit any more stuff for us.
Yeah,
He's edited out.
He's edited out.
So, we are segueing from seaweed into the Giants Causeway.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Before you forget the segue, which I was very proud of.
It was a very good segue. So tell me about your process for coming up with that segue.
Such a dick. This was a really fun one to tell because we've told it so many times. I think the Giants Causeway is a story we've told mostly as a kid's story.
Shout out to the time I was telling it to 250 children and forgot it.
You forgot it?
I forgot. I forgot the setup. I didn't get the setup right. And as you know, it was fine. 3 people were paying attention. They were on their last day of summer school. They didn't give a fuck what I was saying. They had no interest in anything I was doing. I was just like, I just have to be louder than you so your teachers... The 3 teachers at the back who were listening thought it was amazing.
I mean, if that doesn't inspire young artists out there everywhere, I don't know what will, okay? I will shout out to the fact that I told it twice this week in primary school in Dublin 8, the Educate Together, beautiful school, and they were doing a whole Mythic week and got the whole school rather, 4 shows in a row. My God! But I got them. I got them shouting, "Fiona, Fiona!" A whole group of, I think they were 2nd, 3rd class, and it was brilliant. After the Giants Causeway, and a group of Americans, I should say, that flew into Letty's Castle in Castleknock recently, and they didn't know what to expect with storytelling. They were like, they just didn't know. Oh yeah, you're going to do a thing before dinner.
Yeah.
And
you're going to do something cultural. Oh.
Yeah, and so then there was kids kind of came in when the music started, and the kids sat up, and everyone was a beautiful ballroom. It was in a castle. It was very epic to be in this beautiful castle. And then started telling the story, and I completely forgot what a Northern Irish accent was compared to a Scottish accent.
I mean, you were telling that to a country that doesn't know that there actually is a difference.
Wow, I don't.
Sorry.
You nearly...
That was nearly spat on.
Wow, that was... Okay.
Is this why we shouldn't videotape? But you're telling that to a culture that famously, think of every Irish, Scottish or Northern Irish accent you've ever heard in an American film by a non-Irish or Scottish actor.
Yeah, it's not right, usually.
They don't... There's no way they would have noticed.
I noticed it so badly, though. I noticed it so badly because
you notice it and then it throws you off is the problem.
Yeah, that's it. I never once was consistent with Una's voice, so that was it. I was like Ben and Donna, and I was bigging it up for the kids.
Yeah, you can do Ben and Donna because he's just Billy Connolly.
Yeah, basically.
I think you need to pick one of the actors in Derry Girls to be Una.
Yeah.
And just do that.
Nice.
You know, like everyone in the Ulster Cycle is Liam Neeson.
Stop saying that to people, especially mid-show. The show on Saturday.
That was the show on Saturday that we did in Rathcrogan, which is Maeve's Gaff, which was very cool to a very lovely group of people at the end of the Tawn March. And I fully called Aron out rotten right in the middle of the show. In the middle of a show,
in the middle of saying a line for Crow McNassa. And it really, it was the curse of Mac. It's not a happy story.
I'm a professional.
Hung me out to dry. I was not very happy with it. Anyway, We have been getting around to a few of the mythic places, including Rathcrogan, and we've both been to the Giants Causeway.
Yes.
And it is pretty beautiful. Like, if you've ever gone there, or if you have ideas of going there, going up is beautiful because you get to see all of the mad, and it really looks cut stone. It looks like
It
cut stone.
absolutely, it looks wild. It does, and like, it doesn't even look cut stone because it's quarried in these like hexagons that like, that's not how you quarry things.
Yeah.
You know, it's
too perfect.
It's too regular.
It's meticulous.
It's incredibly.
Meticulous. Meticulous is what I said.
You did.
I
It's
didn't
not a
mean-
word, I
I
don't
didn't.
think.
I was
If it
gonna
is a
go
word,
on
it's
by.
very
Just
medical.
gonna keep on going. Just
I mean, the theme of today is calling you out.
great. Love today then.
Yeah, it's fun.
But
It's fun for me. But yeah, it looks not only like man-made, but like you could see it being like made by something supernatural because it's so regular, and these blocks are like, they're such a regular pattern, they're such a regular size. It's extraordinary looking.
There's a real wave you can walk up them. Like there's a way of like, you know, going from the low to the high, and it's
Because some of them are little and some of them are tall,
Massively
but they're
tall.
all the same kind of, you know, width around, and they're all bizarre.
Bizarre.
So you would never think that was a naturally occurring pattern.
In fairness, it does look like, all right, who made it? Which one of you guys did
Giants,
this?
probably.
Giants definitely did it.
Giants, probably.
And it's a beautiful, like, you're on the northern coast, and like you have the cliff faces, which is, you know, the all around this little island that we have of ours. When you have a steep sheer drop, it's just extremely rugged and out there, and you have the sea
Majestic
washing and,
Ireland.
oh jeez, it is lovely.
So majestic. So Ireland.
So Ireland. You know, in the summertime when it's actually nice and tempered and warm ish,
It's what?
it's not cold.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, not cold.
Yeah, sometimes it stops raining for a minute.
Yeah, this weekend is not a good example of that actually, because that's been pissing rain.
Yeah, and then it decided to be really sunny during the week when everyone was at work.
It was a nice trek.
To be honest, that is actually, I'm pretty sure this is why I have always been very convinced by the Dagda controlling the weather, because
Totally.
he's like
I agree.
either not paying attention or playing a joke.
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
Very much both.
Not paying attention.
like-
What's the joke?
When are all the kids doing exams? Beautiful, beautiful weather song. Just beautiful sunshine. Amazing, amazing. And when are they back in school? We'll just have that
Rain.
week. That week of when they're back in school after summer will be glorious again. And then as soon as they're out the door, rain. Thunder, gloom, muck. Yeah.
So, in terms of the Giants Causeway, as a story, it's always struck me as somewhere between a myth and a folktale. You know, it's
it has that vibe.
It has
'Cause
that vibe.
It's also the kind of like, it's the myth of, you know, it's the creation of the place, and it's the naming of the place, and it's the like
The explanation of the landscape around you, like some form of not quite superstition, but it's a belief.
Which is kind of funny, because a lot of the time in myths, when you've got the explanation of the land around you, it's like, that is the body of a sleeping god. And this is very like, no, somebody came over for a scrap.
Well, that's what I like about it, because a lot of like,
So
you know,
it's a lot less elevated than some of those like landscape myths that you get in other places. It's a very folky version of that kind of storytelling, I think.
yeah, and like on Farmara down in Kerry, like you know the island that's it looks
Just
like
fully looks like a fella lying down in the sea.
absolutely, and it's beautiful, and like you can see it from the south of Kerry, and you can see it as you turn the corner into Dunqueen, looking over it, and it's beautiful.
And it's called on Farmaraf, which means
The dead man.
Yeah.
But there's no story about it.
Yeah.
You know, there's like, what happened? I want to always know
What's
who was
the
the
story
giant, who was the
behind
man,
the dead
why did
man?
he lie down, what's the... And
No.
not that I know of, unless anyone has a shout
yeah,
out
if
to...
anyone knows the story of the Farmarav, let us know, because that would be class. He's very much looks like a big dude lying in the sea.
Yeah. And so then it's interesting. I love the fact that it's tied in with Fiona MacCool. It was giant. You know, then there's versions of these stories where Fiona is a giant, or his reputation. I always like to say.
I always think like there's that thing in myth, and there's that thing in Irish myth, and it comes up a little bit in Greek myth as well, of like the past was better. Like people were better in the past. And I think it's very much because, you know, storytellers are as they get older and more respected, start getting nostalgic about things were better in my day. That's not just a thing that happens to human brains where they think things are better in the past. That's a true thing. You know what I mean? I think this is just like successive generations all experiencing nostalgia. And therefore collectively, and then collectively being like, things were better in the past. And my dad said things were better when he was a kid, and his dad said that things were better when he was a kid.
Right.
Therefore, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of a cumulative nostalgia thing, but like, it does come up in a lot of the stories where there's that kind of time travel or that time skip element, like Oisin and Tiernan Oak, where he comes back and he's way bigger than everybody, and everybody's little, and everybody's kind of, small and pathetic and measly, and he's this like great big, which, in some ways I think is that sort of compounded nostalgia thing, but I think in other ways it probably has a lot to do with the fact that, if you think about poverty in Ireland in the kind of 1800s, like, people probably did get smaller
100%.
when their diets got poorer.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, when people went from kind of cattle herders to living off grain the little bit of grain they were able to grow, and then off potatoes, and literally potatoes and buttermilk was the peasant diet, like, and nothing else.
You're not going to have all your proteins and your PE supplements there.
It's an astonishingly complete diet, actually.
Yeah.
You fully can live on it, okay?
You can, but like,
you're not going to be like, you're not, no, but that's what I mean, you're not.
Oh, really?
Potatoes have like all of, like, the
necessary
bits that the spud is missing, the dairy will actually give you. So it's weirdly complete, pretty much complete, but like, there's, again, you're not going to get like, it's not the same as being, you even saw how much taller Irish people are of like our generation than a couple of generations back. Sure. And you see it in Europe where, all the Nordic countries got 7 feet tall all of a sudden. Right. Used to be titchy. Yeah. Like, these kinds of like, a lot of it is diet related. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but I think Fiona MacCool is maybe like, there's a couple of reasons why he's remembered as a giant. And giants are cool. But I also feel like that's maybe a story where the Fionn part is a bit of an add-on. Totally, yeah. Like, it's just very like, this giant came over to fight the local big man, and the local big man chased him off, and the Irish local big man became, at some point, Fionn. Right, but unusually then the story is to flip it and make the Irish giant utterly, in Fionn's case, utterly useless and dependent on his wife. Yeah. Which is brilliant, and like, it's a nice flip of that hero to show the strength of the woman that is with him. It's an interesting perspective, because I was looking at some of the like little bits on the wall down in Rathcrogan at the weekend, and talking about what was the role of women in Celtic society, and well, the Romans were really freaked out because their wives fought with them and were just as terrifying as their husbands, and like this was kind of. It was a much more, like, it was not perfectly egalitarian, but it was a much more egalitarian thing, society, culture. So I think it is interesting that's, and that was not something that I really noticed in this story when I was a kid. It was just a trickster story. And it was kind of like, it was a Fiona MacCool story and it was a trickster story. But it was only when I kind of, we started telling myths and we were kind of, paying a little bit more attention to who's doing what in the stories, and I was like, oh, this is just fully an Una story. Yeah, like, fully this is this lady saving the day. Absolutely, and, it's always been a story of her wit. And the three, and there's various versions of it, of course, and like the three that I like picking are the stones that have been crushed, the house being turned around, and the tree dug up to get the well at the top. I think there are other ones. There are other ones. I always like the stone. I always like ending on squeezing the water out of the stones. Yeah. Because I think that's a nice, and then terrified Fionn squeezes the cheese, and Belladonna is like, ooh. Yeah. But yeah, I have definitely told it with other ones in it, and then forgot which one I was doing, and then lost track. Because you have to set them up at the start, and you fully have to set them up at the start. I didn't do that. If you don't, like it's a really interesting thing about storytelling. Like, it's like telling a joke. You gotta tell, like, the setup is more important than the punchline. Like, you gotta know where you're going with it. And I think that was kind of once you start thinking of it, kind of constructing it backwards in that way, it becomes a lot easier.
Totally.
Um,
And it's a funny one to kind of let those pay off. And again, to get so used to telling it, and then you get almost absent-minded in the construction of that, which both you and I have probably fallen into.
Yep.
But the setting up something that seems like just a small, harmless introduction.
Yeah.
That she was always a bit annoyed that her house wasn't south-facing, and she stubbed her toe one morning, and she looked around for Fionn, and then she had to go all the way down to get the water from the thing. While waiting for Fiona MacCool. Cool. Those things are all kind of seemingly.
It's just like her daily life. It doesn't feel like you're setting up anything in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah, then when Ben and Donna arrives, of course, it gets nicely paid off. And then that is our explanation for this bizarre shaped thing, is that this giant is quarrying stuff with his hands.
Yeah.
And that's why they come out that shape, and then he flings them back in a heap.
And he just has an amazing... I always like to think that he throws them as he's going.
Yeah.
And he just, like, the first one he kind of just leaves there. And then just it makes sense in my head that he just keeps on casting and they land in the exact same spot.
Yeah, because
Yes,
they're
totally.
in a big pile.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot.
There's a lot. I mean, it is a fair stretch to Scotland. You would need all of them and possibly more. If you were giant. I'm just saying. If you really want
Well,
to
I mean, it depends on how long the giant's legs are and how many steps in between each pillar.
Look.
You know what? Somebody who's good at sums can find out and figure out exactly how tall, or approximately how tall, Ben and Donna is by finding out how many of those stones are at the Giants Causeway and the distance between the Giants Causeway and the nearest point on the coast of Scotland, and doing some sums to figure out what would be the space between them that you'd have to put them at, and then you would find how long his legs were, and then you could make an approximation of how tall he is.
There's a challenge, lads. There you go. Look, there's a challenge.
Somebody else do some.
We'll just stick with the stories and you do the sums and let us know how tall he actually is, because I still like the fact that he's as tall as the sky. It's just a nice, easy way out of that one.
Sure.
No sums involved in that one. And of course,
he was 16 meters tall exactly.
Of course, the real explanation is something volcanic rock, something. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I'm not really sure what the story is with the Giants Causeway. I like my story. You can figure out what story you want to listen to.
Volcanic rock.
Yeah.
It's very, very hot.
Very, very hot.
The ocean.
Yes.
Very, very cold.
Very cold.
And a very hot thing.
Very hot thing.
Meets a very cold thing.
Very cold thing. Go! Giants Causeway. Right. Okay.
Get it now?
Get it now. Get it now.
Sound
Our
effects.
giants.
That are giants. That are giants.
Brilliant. So, seeing as we've told that one a few times, many, many times, and oftentimes to kids, and we've worked it out, I was able to play with how I told that pretty easily in terms of the podcast. You had the kind of counterpoint on Blarney, eh? Because that was not a very enjoyable one for you to tell.
I fucking hated it so much. I didn't hate it.
Tell me about your process, Sorcha.
What a good question, Aaron. What an intelligent question.
Shut up and tell me about your process.
I read a lot of stuff. I listened to, I think you'd done one on it.
Well, I done Clean as Wave, which was
loosely
tied in.
You'd done Clean as Wave, and you'd done a tie-in with Clean as Wave. So I read a lot of Blarney stuff, and I read a lot of stuff about, because I was trying to get my head around what's the historical context for this guy who built the Blarney Castle, and it was so fucking complicated.
There's a lot there.
Because everybody's fighting with everybody. There's some English people happening. It's terrible. They're kind of invading, but kind of not. And actually kind of doing a weird legal thing where they're like, this isn't an invasion. We're just confiscating your land. And there's all kinds of shit going on in England that I have no idea what's happening there. Kings and queens and lunatics. Just like there's a lot going on. Like the fact that your man was, I think he was the 9th Earl and he was the son of the 6th Earl, because there've been fucking 3 Earls in between and he'd murdered 1 or 2 of them.
Lovely.
Like all in the same family.
Wow.
And that was like one family.
Yeah.
That's the Earls of Muskerry.
Lovely.
That's what he was. That's what they were, the Blarney heads. But like, that was one family. There was all these different earls. There was all this different like Irish nobility like running around the place, just fucking infighting, and like that, of course, kind of famously, or at least from my understanding of it, it was that disunity that, of course, allowed the sort of the opening for colonization to happen, because there was no High King of Ireland to go, listen lads, we need to get our shit together.
Yeah, let's all band
Let's
together
all actually
against
band
those
together
guys.
against those guys, because they weren't those guys. Like Ireland and England, I think certainly up until the Norman invasion, were like very culturally similar.
Yeah, mixed, and there was.
And they were very, I think there was a lot of travel to and fro, I would say, and there's probably there was a lot of there still are a lot of cultural similarities between Ireland and England and the rest of the UK. So,
but I suppose what I find interesting in, like, I focus on Cleana's wave. I took some poetic license with understanding the story of the rock and what I had kind of known in the background of the McCarthys, and then just kind of told it as a story focused on Cleana, which is quite freeing. And we've talked about how we put 2 logical steps in between the mythical kind of landscape that allows us to do that, or to take those kind of poetic licenses. But you can't quite do that when it's history.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Or it's more restrictive.
And I was kind of like, I don't want to. And also, it's a history that has some gaps in it, which is a little annoying. Like the court case that he's going to, I couldn't find anywhere written down what that was about.
Right.
What the court case was about. So it was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Just the court case.
Just like that was the thing that started to trip me up. Where I was like, well, he went to argue a court case in Dublin and had the dream the night before, and then it was his son who had to go over to England to stand in front of the Queen and argue to her, and she's the one who said that's a load of Blarney. So that was kind of like, okay, poetic license is cool, but I feel like I have to stand on a little bit of solid ground before I can start doing that. Right. So I didn't enjoy it.
Which is interesting, because listening to it I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the very slow-paced delivery, the accuracy, which I find very immersive, of facts and names. I know some people get kind of overloaded by when there's a lot of detail or names. I often find that just adds to my level of immersion. I don't hold on to the names as much, and I allow myself to fall into the kind of the background. And of course, Alan Holman put music to this, and very subtle in the background. Just kind of a few chords, just very boom, and that's kind of the mythic resonance that was kind of going through the story, which led into that kind of somewhere between history talk, somewhere between a myth and a story, and like it works as a podcast and as a thing to listen to.
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing about any kind of creative process is you're often not actually a particularly good judge of what output is good, because the thing that you have the most crack doing might not be that much fun for anybody else. Right. And I think we've all I know I have definitely seen films particularly, or plays, where I'm like, the people in this are having more fun than I am.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, you guys had a great time making this film, and it shows, but unfortunately, it is actually taken away from the thing.
It's a little bit more so, I find it on stage, when everyone is having so much crack on stage, and you can tell, and you're like, right, lads.
You're like, cool, we're here. And actually, I thought that kind of was the point. So right. It is a little bit like, I think sometimes you're not the best judge of your own stuff.
The counterpoint to that is
well, it's also no fun to watch somebody who's having a fucking thoroughly miserable time.
Of course, but I mean, the counterpoint in a positive regard is when you maybe don't necessarily overly enjoy the experience, but the process, but the product actually comes out as a something that clicks and works, because again, you've hit the beats, you know how to deliver the tone and variation, and all of that stuff works, and like the storytelling aspect of that tale really, really works, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah,
and we'd love to hear your comments as well if you liked the story Sorcha didn't like.
I didn't like telling it particularly. I haven't particularly listened back to it either, but like it's
But you have a difficulty listening back to anything you do.
difficulty listening to anything.
That's fair.
hence our continual push-pull about whether to send voice notes or text notes on WhatsApp.
It's push-pull.
It's push-pull. That Aron keeps sending me voice notes and I keep going, please stop. Please. I have to. This takes so much effort.
Keep it short. Try keep it short.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing about Blarney, the fact that we're from there, we're close to the tower, we've kissed the Blarney Stone, I think 3 times, if not more.
Couple of times.
Like when we were younger. And it is a beautiful area. I mean, like during the lockdown last year when I was stuck in Cork, I was going there nearly every week just to go around the forestry. The lands there are gorgeous and they're really well maintained. There's a beautiful lake there. You can go all the way around the lake and see different sites and different angles of the castle. The gardens are so well maintained, and there's a tomb, a standing stone. What's it called? A megalithic tomb.
There's a ring of stones, isn't there? There's a stone circle.
There's a stone circle as well. I think that might have been kind of put in there. I'm not entirely sure. There's definitely an.
I found a story about it, but I can't remember which fucking. Yeah. I can't remember if I put it in the podcast. To be honest, I don't think I did, because that was also kind of like part of that was finding a lot of stuff and then deciding what stuff I wasn't going to do.
Yeah,
do you know?
Yeah. Well, that's getting over burdened with too many details and how to weed it out and find the through line.
Exactly.
And with something like that, when you have so much detail, dates, names, court cases, who's invading who, what do you actually want to focus on? You want to focus on the stone and clean it.
I don't think I was nearly as precise with this as Aron thinks I was.
All right, okay. I mean, you can just claim to be.
No, I feel bad.
But I think your head does that anyway. I think I'm just trying to describe.
I also thought so, and then I tried to do this podcast and I was like, oh, it doesn't. I couldn't be a historian. This is hard.
Very, very true. Very, very true.
There's some things that my brain arranges very well, and then everything else. People sometimes ask me, how do you remember the stories? And I'm like, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of room.
I think this is a good time to...
For most people, it's assigned like birthdays and names and all of,
Yeah.
What a date is.
Yeah, autobiographical memories, not there.
Oh, I don't remember anything that's ever happened to me.
Or that you've done or said.
Or that I've done or said. I forget everything I say as soon as I say it. If anyone thinks that these podcasts are very repetitive, that's why. As soon as I've said it, I've completely forgotten it. I hope they're not, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I won't be asking her. I'll be asking you.
Oh, no.
That's the sound of the wall getting a rubber ball.
I think that's the sound of the end of the podcast, because you've been desperately trying to cut me off for 5 minutes.
I have been. Apologies if there's been some strange noises up the top of this, because the wind is windy and there's some, I don't know, she spirits up there.
There's some branches.
Branches.
Do you know what? It's not late enough for the foxes to run across the roof, so count yourself lucky, frankly.
Yeah,
people listening
for that.
That's an unnerving sound when you're not used to it.
That was just branches. Apologies for the branch noises. Thank you very much for the Patreon support, guys. You are absolute legends. You help us maintain a bit of inspiration as these tell these stories, and as the branch also waves goodbye, we will too. Slán, Clonmore, and see you next time.